The bedroom had been a graveyard for 6 months, and I was the only one mourning. Beth lay beside me like a marble statue, perfectly sculpted and just as cold, her back turned with the precision of a military operation. Every night, the same routine. She'd slip into bed wearing flannel pajamas that covered every inch of skin, position herself exactly 18 inches from my side of the mattress, and emit the kind of silence that screams louder than any argument. "Jim?" she said without turning around, her voice carrying that particular tone wives use when they're about to rearrange your entire weekend. "Don't forget about the charity gala tomorrow night, the Riverside Foundation thing." I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint. 17, same as yesterday. "Right. The thing where we pretend to be happy for 3 hours while you show me off like a trained seal." "Don't be dramatic, it's important for appearances. Amanda Voss will be there. She's the regional director now. I need to make a good impression." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Beth worked part-time at the foundation, mostly planning events and managing social media. It gave her something to brag about at the country club while keeping her schedule flexible enough for yoga classes and lunch dates with the other wives. The pay was minimal, but Beth didn't work for money. She worked for status. "And Jim?" She finally turned, her blonde hair catching the lamplight. Even annoyed, she was beautiful. That was the problem. "Try to look like you actually want to be there. Smile, dance with me, act like we're still married." "We are still married," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Are we?" She turned back to her side of the bed. "Because from where I'm lying, it feels more like we're roommates who share a mortgage." I wanted to point out that roommates typically split expenses, while I paid for everything from her car payment to her weekly spa appointments. I wanted to mention that roommates don't usually promise to love, honor, and cherish each other, or that they don't typically withhold basic human affection for half a year. Instead, I said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a live wire, dangerous and crackling with unspoken resentment. "My name is James Parrish, but everyone calls me Jim. I'm 40 years old, and I own Parrish Brothers Electrical, the largest electrical contracting company in 3 counties. Started it 12 years ago with my older brother John, using every penny of our father's life insurance money and a business loan that kept me awake nights for the first 2 years. Now we employ 67 people, hold contracts with half the commercial developments in the region, and last year we cleared just over $2 million in revenue. Not bad for a guy who started out pulling wire through crawl spaces for $8 an hour. The success should have made me happy, should have made Beth happy too. But somewhere along the way, success became expectation, and expectation became resentment. The more the company grew, the more Beth seemed to shrink away from me, as if my ambition was somehow embarrassing to her. "I'm going to shower," I said, throwing back the covers. "Don't use all the hot water. I have that early yoga class." Of course she did. The bathroom mirror showed me a man who looked older than 40, gray threading through brown hair, lines around the eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The face of someone who'd been carrying weight that wasn't entirely physical. I turned on the shower and let the water run hot, using every degree Beth had asked me not to use. The next morning, I arrived at Parrish Brothers Electrical to find John's truck already in the parking lot. My brother was always an early riser, but lately he'd been getting to the office before dawn, claiming he wanted to catch up on paperwork. John was many things, charming, ambitious, occasionally ruthless, but he'd never been a paperwork guy. "Morning, sunshine," called Mary Kowalski from the reception desk. Mary had been with us since year 2, back when our office was a double-wide trailer and our biggest contract was rewiring a Dairy Queen. She was 55, sharp as a tack, and had the kind of institutional memory that made her invaluable. "Your brother's been here since 6. Coffee's fresh." "What's he working on so early?" "Don't know. Had his door closed all morning." "Oh, and Beth called. Said to remind you about some party tonight." "Gala," I corrected. "It's a gala. Apparently there's a difference." Mary snorted. Fancy word for expensive party, where rich people congratulate themselves for helping poor people they'll never actually meet. That's remarkably accurate. I poured coffee from the pot Mary kept running all day, strong enough to wake the past and twice as bitter as my marriage. The office was starting to come alive around us. Connie Parrish, my younger sister and our chief financial officer, waved from her desk where she was already deep into spreadsheets. Carl Robertson, our vice president of operations, was on the phone with a supplier, his voice carrying the easy authority of someone who'd been managing construction projects since before I was born. This was my real family. The people who showed up every day, who celebrated our wins and weathered our losses, who built something meaningful together. They felt more like home than the house I'd bought for Beth 3 years ago. John's office door opened, and my brother emerged, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. At 43, John was still handsome in that way that made women at bars buy him drinks and men want to either befriend him or punch him. Today, though, he looked distracted. "Jim, good. We need to talk about the Morrison project. There's been a change." "What kind of change?" "Client wants to add another phase. Could double the contract value, but they need a decision by Monday." This was how John operated, always chasing the bigger deal, the next opportunity. It's what made him a good partner and a dangerous brother. He saw every situation as something to be leveraged, every relationship as a potential advantage. "That's good news, right?" "Should be, but it means weekend work, probably through the next month. I know Beth won't be happy about the hours." There was something in his tone, a familiarity with Beth's opinions that felt oddly intimate. John had always been charming with my wife, but lately I'd noticed him asking about her more often, remembering details about her schedule and interests that seemed excessive for a brother-in-law. "Beth will adapt," I said. "She always does?" John smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Right, of course she will." The day passed in the usual rhythm of phone calls, site visits, and problem solving. Parrish Brothers had grown beyond what either John or I had imagined when we started, but growth brought complications. More employees meant more personalities to manage. Bigger contracts meant bigger risks. Success, I was learning, was its own kind of burden. At 5:30, I headed home to get ready for Beth's gala. The house was empty when I arrived. Beth's car was gone, probably at the salon getting ready for her big night. I showered, shaved, and put on the tuxedo she'd had tailored for me last Christmas. It fit perfectly, which somehow made it feel like a costume. Beth returned an hour later, transformed into the woman who'd caught my eye at a company Christmas party 8 years ago. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant style that showed off the diamond earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary. Her dress was black, simple, and probably cost more than most people made in a week. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. "Thank you. You look handsome too." She adjusted my bow tie with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been dressing men for formal events their entire life. "Remember, Amanda Voss will be there. She's important to my career." "I'll be charming. Just be yourself. The version of yourself that built a successful company, not the version that makes sarcastic comments about charity work." "Fair enough." The Riverside Foundation Gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Marriott downtown, the kind of event where people spent more on their outfits than most families spent on groceries in a month. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of women who measured their worth in carats and social conditions. Beth transformed the moment we walked through the doors. Her smile became brighter, her laugh more musical, her posture straighter. This was her element, the world of appearances and networking, where every conversation was a potential opportunity and every introduction a chance to climb higher on the social ladder. "There's Amanda," Beth whispered, nodding toward a woman in her early 40s standing near the bar. Amanda Voss was attractive in a professional way. Sharp suit, confident posture, the kind of woman who commanded attention without demanding it. "Come on, I'll introduce you." We made our way through the crowd, Beth greeting people with the enthusiasm of a politician at election time. She knew everyone's name, remembered their children's achievements, asked about their recent vacations. It was impressive in its way. "Amanda." Beth's voice carried just the right note of professional warmth. "I'd like you to meet my husband, Jim Parrish. Jim, this is Amanda Voss, our new regional director." Amanda extended her hand with a firm grip and direct eye contact. "Mr. Parrish, Beth talks about you constantly. You own an electrical company?" "Parrish Brothers Electrical. We handle most of the commercial work in the county." "Impressive. I've seen your trucks around town. Beth tells me you're quite the entrepreneur." There was something in Amanda's tone, genuine interest rather than polite small talk. It had been so long since someone had shown real curiosity about my work that I found myself actually engaging in the conversation. "We've been lucky. Started small and grew with the market." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Beth interjected. "Jim works 18-hour days. Sometimes I barely see him." It was a lie, of course. I worked long hours during busy periods, but I was home for dinner most nights. Beth was rewriting history to fit whatever narrative she thought would impress her boss. "Well," Amanda said, "success requires sacrifice. I should know. I just went through a divorce myself. Career ambition isn't always compatible with marriage." There was an awkward silence. Beth's smile flickered for just a moment before returning to full wattage. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. Turns out some people are better as friends than spouses. Amanda's eyes met mine for a moment longer than necessary. If you'll excuse me, I should make the rounds. Nice meeting you, Jim. She walked away, leaving Beth and me standing by the bar. She seems nice, I said. She's very professional, very focused on results. Beth's tone had cooled noticeably. Let's get some drinks. The evening progressed with the usual gala routine. Cocktails, dinner, speeches about the Foundation's important work, and an auction where people bid ridiculous amounts on vacation packages and signed sports memorabilia. Beth was in her element, working the room like a professional networker. I was not in my element. I never was at these things. Having fun? The voice belonged to Taylor Bishop, Beth's best friend and primary enabler. Taylor was the kind of woman who collected gossip like some people collected stamps, carefully cataloged and always ready to be shared at the most opportune moment. Absolutely, I loved it. Nothing I enjoy more than watching people spend $5,000 on a weekend in Napa. You're terrible, Taylor laughed. Beth says you've been working too much lately, all those late nights at the office. Business is good, can't complain. Still, you should make time for fun. Life's too short. She gestured toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to a jazz quartet. When's the last time you and Beth danced? I couldn't remember. Literally couldn't remember the last time Beth and I had danced together, or done anything together that wasn't related to maintaining the appearance of a happy marriage. It's been a while, I admitted. Well, fix that. She's your wife, not your business partner. The irony was that my actual business partner showed me more affection than my wife did. John might be ambitious and occasionally ruthless, but at least he was direct about it. With Beth, everything was subtext and suggestion, layers of meaning buried beneath polite conversation. Speaking of John, I spotted him across the room talking to a group of local business owners. He cleaned up well in a tuxedo, and he was holding court the way he always did, charming, confident, and the center of attention. Several women were hanging on his every word, including a couple I recognized as wives of other contractors. John caught my eye and raised his glass in a mock salute. I returned the gesture, wondering why he was here at all. He'd never shown interest in Beth's charity work before. Jim? Beth appeared at my elbow, her voice carrying a note of command. Dance with me. It wasn't a request. She was already leading me toward the dance floor, her hand on my arm with just enough pressure to make refusal impossible. The jazz quartet was playing something slow and romantic, the kind of song that was supposed to make couples feel connected. Smile, Beth whispered as we began to dance. People are watching. People are always watching, that's the problem. Don't start. Not here. We moved through the motions of dancing, our bodies close but somehow not touching in any meaningful way. Beth's smile never wavered, but her eyes were scanning the room, making sure we were being seen by the right people. This is ridiculous, I said quietly. What's ridiculous? This. Us. Pretending to be something we're not. We're not pretending. We're being civilized. We're being fake. Beth's smile tightened. Lower your voice. Why? Afraid someone might realize we're not actually happy? I'm afraid someone might realize you're being a jerk. The song ended, but instead of staying for another dance, I stepped away from Beth. I need some air. Jim, don't... But I was already walking away, leaving her standing on the dance floor with her perfect smile and her perfect dress and her perfectly constructed facade. I made it as far as the bar before Amanda Voss intercepted me. Trouble in paradise? She asked, not unkindly. Something like that. Want to talk about it, or would you prefer to drink about it? I looked back at Beth, who was now talking to Taylor, both of them shooting glances in my direction. Actually, would you like to dance? Amanda raised an eyebrow. With the man who just walked away from his wife on the dance floor? With the man who just remembered what it feels like to have an honest conversation. She studied my face for a moment, then set down her wine glass. All right, but if she comes over here and makes a scene, you're on your own. Deal. Amanda was a good dancer, better than Beth. More importantly, she was present, not scanning the room, not performing for an audience, just dancing. We moved easily together, and for the first time all evening, I felt like I could breathe. So, she said, want to tell me what that was about? Marriage is complicated. That's what people say when they don't want to admit it's not working. Her directness was refreshing. You're very blunt. Life's too short for subtlety. I learned that during my divorce. Spent 2 years trying to fix something that was broken from the start, all because I was afraid of admitting failure. And now? Now I'm happier than I've been in years. Turns out being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. The song ended, but neither of us moved to leave the dance floor. I could see Beth watching us from across the room, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for the dance," I said. "Thank you for the honesty. It's rarer than you might think." Amanda smiled. "If you ever want to continue that conversation, I'm in the book." She walked away, leaving me standing on the dance floor with the distinct feeling that something important had just happened. I wasn't sure what, exactly, but for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Beth appeared at my side moments later, her smile strained. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Sure." We didn't speak during the drive home. Beth stared out the passenger window while I navigated the empty streets, both of us lost in our own thoughts. It wasn't until we were in our bedroom, changing out of our formal wear, that she finally broke the silence. "That was embarrassing." "What was embarrassing?" "You walking away from me, dancing with my boss, making me look like a fool." I hung up my tuxedo jacket and turned to face her. I danced with Amanda because she's interesting, because she actually wanted to talk to me, not just use me as a prop. "She's my boss, Jim. My career." "Your career?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Beth, you work part-time planning parties. It's not exactly a career." Her face flushed. "Just because I don't spend 18 hours a day at an office doesn't mean my work isn't important." "You're right. I'm sorry. That was unfair." But the damage was done. Beth turned away from me, and I knew that whatever small chance we'd had of fixing things had just evaporated. We went to bed the same way we had for the past 6 months, on opposite sides of the mattress, 18 inches apart, surrounded by silence that screamed louder than any argument. I lay awake for hours, thinking about Amanda's words. Being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. I was starting to understand what she meant. The following Monday brought the kind of gray October morning that made you want to crawl back into bed and wait for spring. I arrived at the office early, hoping to lose myself in work and forget about the awkwardness of Saturday night. Beth had barely spoken to me all day Sunday, communicating primarily through pointed silences and strategic door closing. Mary was already at her desk, nursing coffee and sorting through the weekend's messages. "Morning, boss. You look like hell." "Thanks. That's exactly what every man wants to hear on a Monday morning." "Rough weekend?" "You could say that." Mary had been with the company long enough to recognize the signs of domestic trouble. She'd watched me go through the early days with Beth, had seen the gradual shift from newlywed happiness to whatever this was. She never offered unsolicited advice, but her observations were usually accurate. "John's already here," she said. "Been in his office since 6:30. Again." That made 3 weeks in a row of John's early morning routine. My brother had always been ambitious, but this level of dedication to paperwork was suspicious. John was a people person, a schmoozer. He did his best work in restaurants and bars, not hunched over spreadsheets in an empty office. I knocked on his door and found him at his desk, surrounded by project files and looking like he hadn't slept much. "You're here early again." "Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be productive." He gestured to the papers spread across his desk. "Morrison project is getting complicated. Client wants to add electrical for 3 more buildings, but they want to keep the same timeline." "That's impossible." "That's what I told them. They're not happy." John rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. There was something different about him lately, a distracted quality that was unlike his usual focused intensity. He'd always been the brother who could juggle 6 different projects while planning his next vacation, but now he seemed scattered. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. Been working too much, I guess." "Maybe you should take some time off. When's the last time you took a real vacation?" "I don't know. A year? 2 years?" John shuffled the papers on his desk. "How was Beth's thing Saturday night?" "Fine. Typical charity gala. Overpriced drinks and underwhelming speeches." "She looked great, though. Beth, I mean. Saw the pictures on Facebook." This was odd. John wasn't on Facebook, and he'd never shown much interest in Beth's social media presence. "You saw pictures?" "Taylor tagged me in something. You know how she is with that stuff." Taylor Bishop was indeed prolific with social media, documenting every social event like a professional photographer, but I couldn't remember John ever being tagged in anything related to Beth's activities. "Right," I said. "Well, I should let you get back to work." "Jim?" John looked up from his paper. "You and Beth are good, right? I mean, you guys seem happy." The question caught me off guard. John and I had never been the type of brothers who discussed our relationships in detail. We talked about business, sports, occasionally politics. Personal problems were handled privately. "We're fine," I lied. "Why?" "No reason. Just, you know, marriage is hard work. Takes effort from both people." you an expert on marriage. You haven't been in a serious relationship since Sarah, and that was 3 years ago." John's expression darkened. Just because I'm not married doesn't mean I don't understand relationships. There was an edge to his voice that I'd rarely heard. John was usually easygoing, quick to laugh off any tension. This defensive tone was new. "You're right. Sorry, I'm just tired." "We're all tired," John said. "Maybe we both need." I left his office feeling unsettled. The conversation had been strange, full of undercurrents I couldn't quite identify. John's interest in marriage, his early morning work sessions, his general air of distraction, it all felt connected somehow. I couldn't see the pattern. The rest of the morning passed in the usual blur of phone calls and problem solving. Carl Robertson stopped by to discuss staffing for the project, and Connie wanted to review my work numbers. Normal business, the kind of routine challenges that usually energize me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like sensing a storm before you could see the clouds. That electric tension in the air that warned of trouble coming. My phone buzzed with a text message. Beth. Having lunch with Amanda today, discussing new project opportunities. This was unusual. Beth rarely texted me during the day unless she needed something, and she'd never mentioned having lunch with her boss before. Amanda Voss had seemed nice enough at the gala, but Beth had been oddly territorial about it. I was still thinking about the text when Mary knocked on my door. "Jim, there's someone here to see you. Amanda Voss from the Riverside Foundation." Speak of the devil. Amanda walked into my office wearing a navy blue business suit and a smile that was both professional and somehow personal. She looked different than she did at the gala, more serious, more focused. "Miss Voss, this is a surprise. I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd take a chance." "Not at all. Please, sit down. Can I get you coffee?" "That would be great, thank you." Mary brought coffee and closed the door behind her, leaving Amanda and me alone in my office. There was something about Amanda's presence that made the space feel smaller, more intimate. "So," I said, "what brings you to Parish Brothers Electrical?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about a project. The foundation is renovating an old warehouse downtown, turning it into a community center. We need electrical work done, and Beth suggested I talk to you directly." This was interesting. Beth had never shown much interest in my work, and she'd certainly never helped generate business for the company. "That's very thoughtful of you. What kind of timeline are we looking at?" "That's the thing. We need it done quickly, and we need it done right. This project is important to the foundation, and to me personally. I can't afford to have any problems." Amanda leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting mine. "Beth speaks very highly of your work. She says you're the best contractor in the area." "Beth said that?" "She did. She also said you're very dedicated to quality work." There was something in Amanda's tone that made me think we weren't entirely talking about electrical work anymore. Or maybe I was reading too much into it. 6 months of marital coldness had probably made me hypersensitive to any sign of female attention. "We take pride in our work," I said carefully. "I can see that. Your reputation speaks for itself." Amanda smiled. "Would you be interested in looking at the project? I could show you the space this afternoon if you have time." "I'd be happy to take a look." "Excellent. Here's my card with my direct number. Call me when you're free and we'll set something up." Amanda stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Jim, thank you for the dance Saturday night. It was the highlight of my evening." She was gone before I could respond, leaving me sitting in my office with her business card and the distinct impression that something significant had just happened. I looked at the card. Amanda Voss, Regional Director, with her phone number written in neat handwriting. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Beth. Lunch was great. Amanda had lots of interesting things to say. I stared at the message, trying to decode its meaning. Beth's texts were usually straightforward. Grocery lists, schedule reminders, requests for money. This one felt loaded with subtext. The rest of the day passed slowly. I found myself thinking about Amanda's visit, about her comment regarding the dance, about the way she'd looked at me when she talked about dedication to quality work. It had been so long since a woman had shown genuine interest in me that I wasn't sure how to interpret the signals. At 5:30, I headed home to find Beth in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. This was unusual. Beth's idea of cooking typically involved takeout menus and microwave instructions. "Smells good," I said. "Chicken marsala. I thought we could have a nice dinner together." "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband?" "Yes," I thought, but didn't say it. "Of course not. It's just unexpected." I've been thinking about what you said Saturday night, about us pretending to be something we're not. Beth turned from the stove to face me. Maybe we have been going through the motions lately. Maybe? Okay, definitely. But I want to fix that. I want us to be better. She moved closer to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. It was the same scent she'd worn on our first date, light and floral with a hint of something more exotic. I've missed you, she said softly. The words should have made me happy. For 6 months, I'd been waiting for some sign that Beth still cared about our marriage, still wanted to work on our relationship. Now here she was, offering exactly what I'd been hoping for. So why did it feel wrong? I've missed you too, I said, because it was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Beth smiled and kissed me, a real kiss, not the perfunctory peck on the cheek that had become our standard greeting. For a moment, it felt like the old days, when we'd actually been happy together. But even as I kissed her back, part of my mind was wondering about the timing. Why today? Why now? Just hours after Amanda's visit to my office. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, Beth said. Why don't you go shower and change? I headed upstairs, my mind racing. Beth's sudden affection, her lunch with Amanda, the mysterious dinner. It all felt connected somehow, but I couldn't see the pattern. It was like looking at an electrical circuit with half the wires hidden behind walls. You knew there was a connection, but you couldn't trace the current. The shower was hot and relaxing, washing away the tension of the day. By the time I came downstairs, Beth had set the dining room table with our good china and lit candles. She'd changed into a dress I hadn't seen in months, something that actually showed she had a body underneath all those conservative outfits. This looks amazing, I said, and meant it. I wanted tonight to be special. We ate dinner like a normal couple, talking about our days, sharing stories, laughing at each other's jokes. It was the first real conversation we'd had in months, and it reminded me why I'd fallen in love with Beth in the first place. She was smart, funny, charming when she wanted to be. But underneath the pleasant dinner conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being managed. Beth was working too hard, trying too deliberately to recreate something that had once come naturally. It felt like a performance, beautifully executed but somehow hollow. After dinner, we moved to the living room with wine. Beth curled up next to me on the couch, closer than she'd been in months. I had an interesting lunch today, she said. Oh, with Amanda? She's very impressive, very driven. She told me some fascinating things about her divorce. Such as how liberating it was, how much happier she is now, how she wishes she'd done it sooner. Beth's hand was resting on my chest, her fingers tracing small circles through my shirt. She also mentioned that you two had quite a conversation at the gala. We danced, we talked. She seems nice. She is nice. She's also very attractive and very available. I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but I didn't like the direction. Beth, what are you getting at? Nothing, just making an observation. She looked up at me with those blue eyes that had first caught my attention 8 years ago. I'd hate for you to get the wrong idea about her interest in you. What kind of wrong idea? The kind that might make you think you have options you don't actually have. And there it was. The real reason for the elaborate dinner, the sudden affection, the intimate conversation. Beth had somehow found out about Amanda's visit to my office, and this entire evening was her way of marking her territory. I'm not sure I understand, I said, though I understood perfectly. I think you do. Beth sat up, her expression hardening slightly. Amanda is my boss, Jim. My career depends on maintaining a good relationship with her. I can't have my husband complicating that. How would I complicate it? By misinterpreting professional courtesy as personal interest. By embarrassing me the way you did Saturday night. The mask was slipping now. The loving wife act was giving way to something colder, more calculating. This wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about controlling the situation. I see, I said. Do you? Because I need to know that you understand how important this is. The foundation is finally giving me real responsibilities, real opportunities for advancement. I can't have you sabotaging me because you're going through some kind of midlife crisis. Midlife crisis? What would you call it? You've been moody for months, distant, critical of everything I do. And now you're flirting with my boss at public events. I stood up from the couch, the wine glass in my hand suddenly feeling heavy. Beth, I wasn't flirting with anyone. I was having a conversation with another human being. Remember those? Conversations? Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime. Beth's eyes flashed with anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means this whole evening has been bullshit. The dinner, the wine, the sudden affection, it's all just you trying to manipulate the situation. I'm trying to save our marriage. No, you're trying to control it. There's a difference. I headed for the stairs, leaving Beth sitting on the couch with her perfectly planned evening falling apart around her. Jim, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I love you, she said, but her voice was flat, mechanical. The words sounded like something she'd read in a script. I love you too, I replied, because it was still true, even if it was no longer enough. I went to bed alone that night, listening to Beth moving around downstairs, cleaning up the remnants of her failed performance. When she finally came to bed an hour later, she positioned herself on her side of the mattress, exactly 18 inches away, and we returned to the silence that had become our normal routine. But something had changed. The evening had clarified things in a way I hadn't expected. Beth wasn't trying to fix our marriage, she was trying to manage it. And for the first time in months, I was starting to think that might not be enough for me. I lay awake until dawn, thinking about Amanda's words from the game. Being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. I was beginning to understand what she meant. Tuesday morning brought the kind of autumn rain that made everything look gray and depressing. I arrived at the office soaked and irritable, having forgotten my umbrella in my rush to escape the house before Beth woke up. We hadn't spoken since our argument the night before, and I wasn't in any hurry to continue our conversation. Mary looked up from her desk as I dripped water across the reception. Rough morning? Getting worse by the minute. Well, here's something to cheer you up. Amanda Voss called. Wants to know if you can meet her at the warehouse project this afternoon, 2 o'clock. I felt a small surge of anticipation, followed immediately by guilt. Amanda was Beth's boss, and getting involved in any kind of relationship, professional or otherwise, was bound to create complications. But the prospect of spending time with someone who actually seemed interested in talking to me was too appealing to ignore. Tell her I'll be there. Will do. Oh, and Jim? Your brother wants to see you when you get a chance. He seems agitated. John's office door was closed, which usually meant he was on an important call or dealing with a crisis. I knocked and heard his voice, muffled but clearly stressed. Come in. John was pacing behind his desk, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked like he'd been up all night, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. No, that's not acceptable, he was saying into the phone. We had an agreement. I don't care what your lawyer says. Fine. We'll discuss this later. He hung up and threw the phone onto his desk with more force than necessary. Problems? I asked. You could say that. Morrison project is falling apart. Client wants to renegotiate the contract, cut our fee by 30%. Can they do that? Legally, probably not. Practically, they're threatening to find another contractor if we don't agree. This was bad news. The Morrison project represented nearly $200,000 in revenue, money we'd already counted on for the fourth quarter. Losing it would mean layoffs, canceled bonuses, and a very uncomfortable conversation with our bank. What are our options? John slumped into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 43 years. Fight them in court and probably win, but spend 6 months and $20,000 in legal fees. Or take the reduced contract and hope we can make up the difference somewhere else. There has to be a third option. If there is, I can't see it. I studied my brother's face, noting the stress lines around his eyes and the way his hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. John had always been the optimistic one, the brother who saw opportunity in every setback. This defeated version of him was unsettling. John, what's really going on? This isn't just about Morrison. He looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What do you mean? I mean, you've been acting strange for weeks, coming in early, staying late, distracted during meetings, and now you're falling apart over a contract dispute that we could handle in our sleep. I'm fine, just stressed about business. Bullshit. I've known you for 43 years. This isn't about business. John stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the rain. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally turned back to me, his expression was pained. You're right, it's not just about business. He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Jim, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago. My stomach clenched. Whatever John was about to say, I already knew I didn't want to hear it. I've been seeing someone, he said quietly. Okay, that's good, right? You've been single too long. It's complicated. How complicated? John turned back to the window, unable to meet my eyes. She's married. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The early mornings, the distracted behavior, the stress that went beyond business problems. John was having an affair, which explained a lot about his recent behavior. What it didn't explain was why he looked like he was about to throw up. "John, that's not like you. You've never been the type to get involved with married women." I know it's wrong, but it just happened, and now it's gotten complicated." "How complicated?" "She wants to leave her husband. She thinks we have a future together." "And you don't?" "I don't know. Maybe. But it would mean destroying her marriage, breaking up a family. I'm not sure I can live with that." I felt a wave of sympathy from my brother. John had always been a good guy underneath the charm and ambition. The fact that he was torturing himself over an affair showed that his conscience was still intact. "Who is she?" I asked. John's shoulders tensed. "I can't tell you that. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "Is she someone I know?" "Jim, please, don't ask me that." The way he said it, the pain in his voice, the refusal to meet my eyes, sent a chill down my spine. John wasn't just having an affair with a married woman, he was having an affair with a married woman I knew. "Jesus, John, tell me it's not someone from the company." "It's not someone from the company." "Then who?" I stopped, my mind racing through possibilities. John's social circle overlapped with mine in predictable ways. We knew the same business owners, went to the same restaurants, attended the same events. If he was involved with someone I knew, the list of candidates was relatively short, and then, like a lightning bolt, it hit me. "No," I said, the word coming out was barely a whisper. John's face went. "Jim, no, tell me I'm wrong." "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." The office seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself, my mind reeling with the implications of what John wasn't saying. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. 4 months. Right around the time Beth had started being cold and distant. Right around the time she'd stopped touching me, stopped talking to me, stopped being my wife in any meaningful way. "Does she love you?" John's voice was barely audible. "She says she does." I felt something break inside my chest, a physical sensation like a wire snapping under too much current. 8 years of marriage, 12 years of partnership with my brother, and it all came down to this moment in a gray office on a rainy Tuesday morning. "Get out," I said quietly. "Jim, let me explain. Get out of my office. Get out of my building. Get out of my life. Please, just listen. Get out." John flinched as if I'd hit him. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at me with an expression of pure misery. "I never meant for this to happen," he said, "but it did happen. And you let it happen. Both of you." After he left, I sat alone in his office for a long time, staring at the rain and trying to process what I'd just learned. My wife was having an affair with my brother. The two people I'd trusted most in the world had been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, planning a future that didn't include me. The early morning meetings suddenly made sense. Beth's sudden interest in my work schedule, her questions about when I'd be home, her mysterious errands and lunch dates. John's distracted behavior, his stress about complicated relationships, his intimate knowledge of Beth's social media posts. They'd been playing me for a fool, and I'd been too blind to see it. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda Voss. "Looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. The warehouse project is going to be exciting." I stared at the message, remembering Beth's warning about misinterpreting Amanda's professional courtesy as personal interest. Now I understood why Beth had been so concerned. It wasn't about protecting her career, it was about protecting her affair. I typed back, "Me too. See you at 2. If Beth wanted to play games, I could play games too, and I was about to become very good at it. The warehouse Amanda had chosen for the community center was a massive brick building in the arts district downtown, the kind of space that had probably housed manufacturing equipment 50 years ago and was now being converted into something more modern and socially conscious. Amanda was waiting for me in the parking lot, wearing jeans and a work shirt that somehow looked more attractive than most women's formal wear. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, extending her hand. "I know this was short notice." "Not a problem. I needed to get out of the office anyway." She studied my face with the kind of perceptive look that suggested she could read more than I was saying. "Rough day?" "You could say that. Want to talk about it, or would you prefer to focus on electrical systems?" "Let's start with electrical systems and see where we end up." Amanda smiled and led me toward the building. Fair enough. The warehouse was impressive. 30,000 square feet of open space with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and enormous windows that let in streams of natural light despite the gray day outside. It was the kind of space that inspired big dreams and ambitious plans. "What are you thinking for layout?" I asked. "Community meeting rooms, computer lab, after-school program space, maybe a small theater for local productions." Amanda gestured toward different areas as she spoke, her enthusiasm evident. We want this to be a real resource for the neighborhood, not just another empty building with good intentions. We spent an hour walking through the space, discussing electrical requirements, code compliance, and timeline considerations. Amanda was knowledgeable about construction, asking the right questions, and understanding the implications of my answers. It was the kind of professional conversation I'd been hoping to have with Beth for years. "This is a great project," I said as we finished our tour. "The kind of thing that actually makes a difference in people's lives." "That's the goal. I've seen too many community development projects that look good on paper, but don't actually serve the community they're supposed to help." "Speaking from experience?" "Unfortunately, yes. My previous job was with a foundation in Chicago. Lots of ribbon cuttings and press releases, not much actual impact." We were standing near the large windows at the front of the building, looking out at the street where people were hurrying through the rain with umbrellas and briefcases. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. I envied them. "Amanda, can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot." "When you got divorced, how did you know it was time? I mean, what was the moment when you realized it was over?" She turned to look at me directly, her expression serious. "When I realized I was happier when he wasn't around. When coming home felt like a chore instead of a relief. When I started making excuses to avoid spending time with the person I was supposed to love most in the world." Every word hit like a physical blow. "That's specific. It's also true. Marriage is supposed to enhance your life, not diminish it. When it becomes the thing you're trying to escape from, it's time to make a change. Even if it means admitting failure, Jim, staying in a marriage that makes you miserable isn't noble. It's just stubborn, and it's not fair to either person." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the rain streak through the windows. Amanda's honesty was both comforting and terrifying. She was giving me permission to think thoughts I'd been trying to suppress for months. "There's something else," I said. "Something I found out today." "Do you want to tell me about it?" So I did. I told her about John's confession, about the affair, about the months of lies and deception. I told her about Beth's sudden interest in controlling my relationship with Amanda, about the elaborate dinner that was really just a manipulation. I told her everything, and Amanda listened without judgment or surprise. "I'm sorry," she said when I finished. "That's a terrible way to find out. The worst part is, I'm not even that surprised. Deep down, I think I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it. That's natural. We protect ourselves from truths we're not ready for. So what do I do now?" Amanda was quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. "What do you want to do?" "I want to burn it all down. The marriage, the business partnership, everything. I want them to pay for what they've done." "That's anger talking. Anger is useful, but it's not a strategy." "Then what is?" "Patience, planning, and most importantly, making sure you don't become the villain in your own story." She was right, of course. Acting on impulse would only give Beth and John ammunition to use against me. If I was going to fight back, I needed to be smart about it. "Amanda, why are you helping me? You barely know me, and this situation could complicate things with Beth." She smiled, but there was something sad in her expression. "Because I've been where you are. Because I know what it feels like to have your trust betrayed by the people you love most, and because..." She paused, seeming to weigh her words. "Because I like you, Jim. You're honest and decent and funny, and those are rare qualities. Even when I'm a mess? Especially when you're a mess. It means you're human." We exchanged phone numbers and made plans for me to submit a bid on the electrical work. As I walked back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not for my marriage, that was clearly over, but for the possibility that there might be life after death, that I might actually be happy again someday. My phone rang as I was driving back to the office. Beth. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" The casual tone, the fake cheerfulness, it all sounded different now that I knew the truth. "Fine. Busy. I was thinking we could go out to dinner tonight. That new Italian place downtown." "Why?" "Do I need a reason to want to spend time with my husband?" "Yes," I thought. "You absolutely need a reason, because you haven't wanted to spend time with me in months." "I'm pretty tired, Beth. Maybe another night." "Oh, okay." There was a pause, and I could practically hear her recalculating. "Well, maybe we could just order pizza and watch a movie." "Sure. Whatever you want." "Great. I'll order from that place you like. See you at home." She hung up, and I realized that this was probably part of some strategy she and John had worked out. Keep Jim happy, keep him distracted, keep him from asking too many questions while they figured out their next move. Well, I had news for them. I was done being managed. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the office working on bids and trying to act normal around the staff. Mary kept giving me concerned looks, and Connie asked if I was feeling okay, but I managed to maintain the appearance of business as usual. At 6 o'clock, I headed home to find Beth in the kitchen, bustling around with the kind of domestic energy she usually reserved for impressing guests. She'd changed into a casual dress that showed off her figure, and her hair was styled in a way that looked effortless, but probably took an hour to achieve. "Pizza should be here in 20 minutes, she said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was your day? You sounded tired on the phone." "Just the usual. Meetings, site visits, paperwork. Anything interesting?" I almost laughed. Beth hadn't asked about my work in months, and now she was suddenly interested in the details of my day. "Not really. Oh, I did meet with Amanda Voss about a project for the foundation." Beth's smile faltered for just a moment. "Really? She didn't mention that when I talked to her today." "You talked to Amanda today?" "Just briefly. Foundation business?" Beth turned back to the stove where she was heating up garlic bread. "What kind of project?" "Community center renovation, electrical work. Could be a good contract for us." "That's nice." The pizza arrived, and we ate dinner while watching a romantic comedy that Beth had chosen. She curled up next to me on the couch, her head on my shoulder, playing the role of loving wife with Academy Award-level commitment. "I love you," she said during a commercial break. "I love you too," I replied automatically. But the words felt hollow, meaningless. Love wasn't supposed to be a weapon or a manipulation tactic. Love was supposed to be honest, supportive, genuine. What Beth and I had wasn't love anymore. It was just habit and fear and the desperate desire to avoid admitting failure. After the movie, we went to bed together for the first time in months. Beth was affectionate, attentive, everything I'd been missing for months. Under different circumstances, I might have been grateful for the attention, might have seen it as a sign that our marriage was healing. Instead, I lay awake afterward, listening to Beth's breathing and thinking about John's confession. 3 months, maybe 4. Right around the time Beth had started pulling away from me, she'd been getting closer to my brother. Every rejection, every cold shoulder, every excuse about being too tired or too busy. It had all been because she was getting her needs met elsewhere. The betrayal was complete. Not just the affair itself, but the months of lies that had accompanied it. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the way they'd made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one who wasn't trying hard enough to save our marriage. Well, I was done trying. Tomorrow, I was going to start fighting back. And Beth and John had no idea what was coming. I fell asleep planning my revenge, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly through the night. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the office before Beth was awake. I had work to do, and I didn't want any interruptions. The first step was gathering information, understanding exactly what John and Beth had been doing, how long it had been going on, and what their plans were for the future. Mary was already at her desk when I arrived, nursing her first cup of coffee and sorting through the morning mail. "You're here early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." "Want to talk about it?" Mary had been with the company long enough to become more than just an employee. She was a friend, a confidant, someone who genuinely cared about the success of Parish Brothers Electric. If I was going to start making changes, I'd need allies. "Mary, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Have you noticed anything strange about John's behavior lately? Anything that seemed off or unusual?" Mary set down her coffee cup and looked at me carefully. "What kind of strange?" "I don't know. Different schedule, personal phone calls, meetings that don't show up on the calendar." "Jim, are you asking me to spy on your brother?" "I'm asking you to tell me if you've noticed anything that might affect the business." She was quiet for a long moment, weighing her loyalty to the company against her discomfort with the situation. Finally, she sighed. "There have been some things. Phone calls that he takes in his office with the door closed, meetings that aren't on the books, and..." She paused, looking uncomfortable. "And what?" "A couple of times, I've seen him leaving the office with someone. A woman. They seemed... close." My heart started beating faster. What did she look like? Blonde, pretty, well-dressed. I assumed she was a client or a vendor, but they didn't act professional, if you know what I mean. I knew exactly what she meant. "Mary, I need you to do me a favor. If John schedules any more off-the-books meetings, I want to know about them. And if he leaves the office with anyone, I want to know about that too." "Jim, what's going on?" "I can't tell you everything right now, but I will soon. I just need to know that I can count on you." "Of course you can count on me. You know that?" "Thank you." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine business, but my mind was focused on strategy. I needed to understand the full scope of Beth and John's relationship before I could decide how to respond. Were they planning to leave their respective situations and start a new life together? Was John planning to push me out of the business? Was Beth planning to file for divorce and try to take half of everything I'd built? At lunch, I drove to a coffee shop across town and called Amanda from my truck. "Hi, Jim. How are you holding up?" "Better than yesterday. I've been thinking about what you said about not becoming the villain in my own story." "Good. That's important." "I want to handle this right, but I also want to make sure they don't get away with it. Is that wrong?" "Not at all. There's a difference between justice and revenge. Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making people hurt." "What if I want both?" Amanda laughed, but not unkindly. "Then you're human. Just make sure you don't let the revenge part override the justice part." "I won't. But Amanda, I'm going to need help. I can't do this alone." "What kind of help?" "I need someone I can trust, someone who's not involved in the situation but understands what I'm going through." "Are you asking me to be your ally in whatever you're planning?" "I guess I am." There was a long pause. "Jim, you know this could complicate things for me professionally. Beth is still my employee." "I know, and I understand if you can't get involved." "I didn't say I couldn't get involved. I said it could complicate things." Another pause. "But sometimes the right thing to do is also the complicated thing to do." "So you'll help me?" "I'll help you, but we do this smart. We do this clean. No illegal activity, no unethical behavior, no actions we can't justify later." "Agreed. Good. So what's the plan?" I looked out at the parking lot, watching people go about their normal lives, and felt a surge of determination. Beth and John thought they were so clever, so careful, so smart, it doesn't work well. "The plan," I said, "is to give them exactly what they deserve." And for the first time in months, I smiled. I didn't walk out of that call feeling like a victim. I felt like a man who finally found the breaker box. I hadn't flipped it and didn't know which switches I would flip. But for the first time, I knew exactly what. Revenge, like electrical work, starts with assessment. You don't rip out wires until you know what they power and what might explode. So I began with a lawyer, not our corporate guy, the one Amanda used in her divorce. "Mean in the right way," she'd said. Her name was Dana Patel, and her office smelled like old paper and strong coffee. When I finished telling her everything, she asked only one thing. "What do you want, legally?" "I want out of the marriage. I want the company safe, and I don't want either of them walking away clean." She nodded. "Good. Anger makes people sloppy. Sloppy loses." Then she gave me the plan. Secure all corporate documents and banking access, gather evidence, and clean, legal, undeniable. File for divorce first. Quietly remove John from any position that could hurt the company, and most important, no confrontations until the time is right. I promised I could pretend a little longer. The next week was paperwork and preparation. Connie handled the numbers. Mary handled the people. Friday afternoon, Mary appeared in my doorway. "John has an off-site meeting, not on the calendar. He said he'd meet her there." She gave me a sticky note, a hotel off the highway, the kind used for short stays and long regrets. I went. At 1:55 p.m., John arrived. At 2:03 p.m., Beth pulled in. Separate cars, separate door, matching guilt. I took photos, plates, cars, the hotel sign, timestamps. Then I sat in my truck and breathed. If I confronted them now, they'd twist it into my meltdown. So I waited. An hour and 20 minutes later, they came out. The same rehearsed exit, the same cowardly distance. I filmed that too. By the time I drove away, whatever part of me still believed in them was gone. Dana flipped through the photos that evening. "Perfect," she said. "Plain, factual, court-ready." "It feels like a bad streaming movie," I muttered. "Bad movies cost money," she said. "This won't. Now keep acting normal until we're ready." "That's easier than it should be," I said. "I don't feel married anymore." "That's numbness," she warned. "Anger will come back. When it does, call me, not them." She tapped the folder shut. "And Jim, you're doing this the right way." For the first time in months, I believed her. Beth threw herself into the role of devoted wife, with the same energy she used at charity galas. For 2 weeks she cooked dinners, suggested movie nights, texted memes, said "I love you" until it sounded mechanical. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed she was trying. But the pattern was obvious now. Every sudden burst of affection aligned perfectly with one of John's off-site meetings or her late committee nights. She wasn't loving me. She was silencing alarms while the fire raged somewhere else. I played my part with John too. Meetings, deadlines, budget arguments. He tried to act normal, Jokes, shoulder pats, casual charm. I responded just enough, but inside I was already rewiring the company. I visited our key clients personally, shifted major decisions from his hands to mine, pulled Carl deeper into leadership, not as John's deputy, but as the future operations director. Officially, John was overworked. Unofficially, I needed to know who could hold the flashlight when the lights were down. One evening, he tried to talk. "You've been different," he said. "We're fine," I told him. "Same as always." He wanted to believe that. I let him. 3 weeks after the motel, we had enough. Photos and videos, call logs, mismatched schedules, confirmed ownership documents, and a full strategy from Dana to push John out and end the marriage cleanly. Time to flip the breaker. I scheduled an extraordinary strategy meeting. Everyone came, me, John, Connie, Carl, and Mary. We began with the Morrison contract. Then I changed the slide. Not numbers, a photo. The motel, 2 cars, 2 familiar plates. The room froze. "This," I said, "is how personal choices can destroy a business." John went white. He asked to talk privately. I told him no. More photos. More timestamps. The evidence played like a grim slideshow. Connie looked heartbroken. Carl looked nauseous. Mary couldn't meet his eyes. "This isn't one mistake," I said. "It's a pattern." Then I turned off the projector. "Effective today, you're removed as CEO." "You can't," he whispered. "I can," I said, "and we're voting." 4 votes to 1. "You're still a shareholder," I told him. "For now. We'll offer you a buyout. Take it quietly, or we go to court, and everything you've done becomes public record." He had no answer. Confronting Beth was easier. Wednesday night, dinner, wine, a quiet house. "John is no longer COO," I said. She blinked. Too fast. "What happened?" I slid an envelope across the table. Inside, printed photos. The motel, the cars, the timeline. Her first reaction wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "This isn't what you—" "Beth," I said, "don't." I showed her the divorce draft. "The house is yours, the car is yours. We'll negotiate the rest through lawyers." "You're just letting everything go?" she asked, half offended, half relieved. "Nothing about this is easy," I said. "I'm choosing the pain I can live with." "And John," she whispered. "He'll get a check and a door," I said. "No more safety." She stared at me. "You don't love me anymore." "I love the woman I married," I said. "I don't know where she went." I took a pillow and a few shirts and slept in the office that night. On the old cot John and I used years ago when trust still existed. Now only the company remained. The next 2 months were quiet. No screaming, no theatrics, no dramatic social media posts, just lawyers, paperwork, signatures. We filed for divorce first. The structure stayed, the house for her, the business for me. Clean, controlled, fun. John was sent an official offer to buy out his share. After a couple of sleepless nights and one conversation with his own lawyer, he agreed. At the office, we announced that John was leaving for personal reasons and wanted to take a break. No details. People already knew more than they said out loud. Gradually, his name stopped appearing on new contracts. His parking space was taken by a new white van we bought for additional crew. His desk in the office remained empty. Sometimes I caught employees' glances at me, and those glances were pity, support, and that very curiosity that makes people watch accident news. But not a single person left. Not a single key client canceled their contract with us. The business survived it. So did I. Amanda kept her distance the whole time, close enough for me to know I wasn't alone, and far enough that no one could accuse her of stealing me away. We texted about the warehouse project, about schedules, about grants. Sometimes about nighttime insomnia, about how life changes after betrayal, about the strange lightness that comes after the hardest decisions. 6 months after I saw their cars at the hotel, the divorce wasn't officially final yet. The system loves paper slowness. But the main thing had already happened. I lived alone in a small but bright apartment downtown. Beth lived in the house I no longer called mine. John lived, I don't know, we didn't talk. He had a check for a substantial sum and a life he had to figure out himself. One evening, returning from a site, I was driving past the old warehouse we were converting into a community center. The light inside was on, warm, steady, right. Outside was a gray, damp day. Inside, voices, laughter, the sound of balls, the rustle of laptops. I stopped, got out, looked inside. In the large hall, teenagers were playing basketball. In another room, someone was conducting computer classes. In a small studio, a woman was teaching a group of people yoga. Amanda was standing at the reception desk talking to some elderly man and laughing. That same laugh that didn't have a gram of falseness. She saw me through the glass, excused herself from her conversation partner, and came out. "Checking my wiring?" she asked. "Inspecting the load distribution," I answered. "Looks stable." "We have excellent contractors," she said. "They know what they're doing." For a while, we just stood side by side, watching a young girl show an older woman how to send an email. "How are you?" she asked. "More alone than lonely," I said. "That's progress already." She nodded. "Is the divorce almost complete?" she asked. "Almost," I said. "The documents are already so thick they could be used as building material." "And the business?" "Standing on its own feet," I said. "Carl is now officially Chief Operating Officer. Connie controls the numbers in ways I never could. I'm doing what I started with: systems, planning, diagrams. Only now the diagrams aren't just cables, but people." "And how is it? Do you like it?" "More than I expected," he said. "No one's keeping me as a decorative dog at events anymore." She smiled. "And Beth?" she asked quietly. "Beth is doing what she's always done," I said. "Surviving in a world where everything is a facade. I hope someday she'll understand that a facade without a foundation is worth nothing. But that's no longer my task." We fell silent. I looked at her. "You know, you were right," I said. "About what exactly?" she answered. "Being alone really is better than being lonely in a relationship," I said. "But there's one more thing." "What?" "Sometimes the best thing is to be among people who are honest with themselves," I said, nodding toward the wall. "Even if you don't yet understand what you want to be honest," she smiled. This time, without sadness. "That's already a good point," she said. "And everything else can be built as you go." She looked at me a bit longer than was necessary by regional director protocol. "If you ever want to discuss how new communication lines are built," she said, "I'm available." "I know," I said, "and in my phone contacts." We said goodbye without grandiose promises. I got in the car, started the engine, and looked at the building one more time. The old warehouse that someone once abandoned and turned into a place where the light was on. Not because it said so on a sign, but because someone really was living, learning, laughing. I didn't know where I'd be. I only knew that I would no longer allow myself to live in a house where the light only existed in photographs. I turned on the headlights and pulled onto the road. Somewhere behind me remained a brother who chose a short circuit instead of repair, a wife who chose a storefront instead of a home, a version of me that was ready to endure all of it. Ahead was a long stretch of highway and many uncharted intersections. But for the first time in a very long time, I was driving along it according to my own plan, not someone else's blueprint. And this was no longer revenge. This was a new connection. Honestly, Evan, you're so ugly I'll never have to worry about you cheating on me. The words hit the dinner table like a grenade, silencing the entire restaurant section around us. My wife Marta's wine glass clinked against her teeth as she took another sip, completely oblivious to the social carnage she'd just unleashed. Our friends, former friends as it would turn out, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly fascinated by their overpriced pasta. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I set down my fork with deliberate precision, the way you might handle a loaded weapon. Interesting theory, sweetheart. Should I cancel my GQ photo shoot? Marta giggled, that shrill sound that had once seemed charming but now felt like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, come on. You know what I mean. You're just so safe, dependable, like a golden retriever. A golden retriever, I repeated slowly, tasting the comparison. How romantic. Our dinner companions, Tom and Jennifer Walsh, supposedly our closest friends, exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should order dessert? But Marta was on a roll now, emboldened by the wine and what she clearly thought was harmless teasing. I mean, look at him. She gestured vaguely in my direction. When's the last time you went to the gym, honey, or bought clothes that actually fit? I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm married to my dad. The silence stretched like taffy. Jennifer's face had gone pale, and Tom was studying his napkin like it contained the secrets of the universe. At the table behind us, a couple had stopped mid-conversation to eavesdrop on our domestic train wreck. You're absolutely right, I said finally, my voice steady as granite. I've really let myself go. Good thing you married me for my devastating good looks. Marta missed the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. I married you because you're sweet and you make good money with your little carpentry business. Looks fade anyway. Little carpentry business. I built custom cabinets for half the wealthy families in our main town, including the mayor's kitchen renovation that had been featured in the local paper. But sure, it was little. Well, I said, signaling the waiter for the check, this has been enlightening. As we drove home in silence, Marta staring out the passenger window with that satisfied expression she wore after what she considered a successful social outing, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. More like the moment when you realize the foundation of your house has been slowly cracking for years, and now you're standing in the rubble. Our split-level suburban home looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but somehow everything felt different. The carefully maintained lawn, the matching outdoor furniture Marta had insisted on, the little decorative flag that said, "Home Sweet Home," it all seemed like props in a play I didn't remember auditioning for. "I'm going to bed," Marta announced, already heading upstairs. That wine gave me a headache. I stood in our living room, surrounded by the life we built together over 12 years of marriage, and listened to her footsteps on the stairs. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs, but I felt like a stranger in my own skin. That's when I heard them, Marta and her best friend Sophie, who had apparently called right after we got home. Their voices drifted down from the master bedroom, and I found myself moving closer to the staircase. "Can't believe you said that to his face," Sophie was saying, her voice bright with malicious glee. "Oh, please. Evan's harmless. Besides, it's good for men to know where they stand. Keeps them grateful." Still, calling him ugly in front of the Walshes? He is ugly, Sophie. I mean, I love him, but let's be realistic. When's the last time another woman looked at him twice? It's actually liberating, knowing I don't have to compete. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, my hand gripping the banister so tightly my knuckles had gone white. 12 years of marriage, and this was what my wife really thought of me. Not just that I was unattractive, that was bad enough, but that I was so fundamentally undesirable that she felt safe humiliating me in public. "You're terrible," Sophie laughed. "But smart. My ex was too handsome for his own good. Always had women throwing themselves at him." Exactly. Evan would never cheat because he couldn't if he tried. It's like having a guard dog that's too ugly to steal. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I walked quietly to my basement office, the one room in the house that was entirely mine. My drafting table was covered with blueprints for a custom entertainment center, and my walls were lined with photos of my completed projects. 12 years of building beautiful things for other people while apparently becoming increasingly hideous myself. I sat down at my computer and, almost without conscious thought, pulled up the website for Mike's gym across town. The same gym where I'd had a membership for 3 years but hadn't visited in 18 months. The same gym where, according to their Facebook page, they offered personal training, nutritional counseling, and something called Total Life Transformation packages. My reflection stared back at me from the dark computer screen. Thinning hair that I'd stopped styling months ago. A face that had grown soft and undefined around the edges. A body hidden under increasingly loose clothing that I'd convinced myself was just comfortable. Maybe Marta was right. Maybe I had become invisible, forgettable, safe. But as I clicked through the gym's website, reading testimonials from men who'd transformed themselves from soft to strong, from overlooked to undeniable, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't quite anger yet. That would come later. It was more like curiosity. A scientist wondering what would happen if he changed the variables in a long-running experiment. I scheduled a consultation for the next morning and booked an appointment with Dr. Martinez, the cosmetic dentist whose ads I've been seeing around town. Then I sat back in my chair and really looked at my reflection on the computer screen. "Ugly," I said aloud, testing the word. It had certainly felt true to say. The truth, I was beginning to realize, was a surprisingly flexible concept. Upstairs, I could hear Marta getting ready for bed, humming some pop song she'd heard on the radio. The same woman who just finished explaining to her best friend why my physical repulsiveness was actually a marriage asset. I opened a new browser window and started researching. Personal trainers, nutritionists, style consultants, dermatologists. It was amazing how many services existed for men who wanted to change everything about themselves. As I scrolled through before and after photos of men who transformed their bodies and their lives, I found myself smiling for the first time all evening. Not a happy smile, something colder and more calculated. If Marta thought she'd married a harmless, ugly, grateful little man who would never threaten her perfect sense of security, she was about to get a very expensive education in just how wrong that person could be. I was still smiling when she called down the stairs. "Evan, are you coming In a minute, I called back, bookmarking another fitness website. Just finishing up some work. Work. That was one way to put it. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. Marta stirred beside me, mumbling something about the noise, but didn't fully wake up. I slipped out of bed and into the clothes I'd laid out the night before, old jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better decades. Mike's gym looked different at 6 in the morning, less intimidating somehow, filled with serious people who nodded politely and minded their own business. The kind of people who understood that transformation was work, not a spectator sport. "You must be Evan," said a voice behind me. I turned to find a mountain of a man with graying temples and arms like tree trunks. "I'm Mike. Thanks for coming in early." Mike led me through an assessment that was both humbling and oddly encouraging. Yes, I was out of shape. Yes, I'd lost muscle mass and gained fat in all the wrong places. But I wasn't broken, just neglected. "The good news," Mike said, scribbling notes on his clipboard, "is that you've got decent bone structure and you're not starting from zero. You did manual labor for years, right? Your body remembers how to be strong." "My wife thinks I'm ugly," I said, surprising myself with the admission. Mike looked up from his clipboard, his expression carefully neutral. "What do you think?" I considered the question seriously. "I think I stopped trying, and I think she got comfortable with that." "Fair enough. So what's the goal here? Feel better, look better, prove a point?" "All of the above." Mike grinned, and I caught a glimpse of the competitive athlete he must have been in his younger days. "I can work with that, but I'm going to warn you up front. Real change is uncomfortable. People in your life might not like it when you start becoming someone different." "Good," I said, and meant it. We worked out for an hour. Nothing too intense, just enough to remind my body what movement felt like. By the time I got home, Marta was in the kitchen making coffee, still in her silk pajamas and looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive skincare products. "You're up early," she said without looking at me. She was scrolling through Instagram, double-tapping photos of her friends' breakfast arrangements and vacation selfies. "Couldn't sleep, went for a drive." She wasn't really listening, absorbed in whatever digital drama was unfolding on her screen. "Oh, Sophie wants to know if we're still doing dinner Friday. That new place downtown?" "Sure," I said, pouring myself coffee. "Should be interesting." Something in my tone must have caught her attention. She glanced up. "You seem different this time. Did something happen?" "Just thinking about what you said last night, about letting myself go." Marta had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Oh, that. Honey, you know I didn't mean anything by it. I was just being silly." "No, you were being honest. There's a difference." She set down her phone and really looked at me for the first time in months. "Evan, you're not ugly. You're just comfortable. There's nothing wrong with comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated, the same way I'd said golden retriever the night before. "Right." The conversation might have continued, but her phone buzzed with a text message that made her face light up in a way that my presence certainly hadn't. "Work emergency," she said, already heading toward the stairs. "That new client wants to meet this morning." I watched her go, noting the extra spring in her step, the way she was already mentally somewhere else. Someone else, maybe. After she left for the office, I spent an hour in my basement workshop, running my hands over the smooth wood of a dining table I'd been crafting for the Hendersons. 12 coats of stain and varnish, each one applied with patience and precision. The kind of work that couldn't be rushed, that revealed its beauty slowly over time. Maybe that's what I needed to become. A long-term project. Something that would surprise people when they finally saw the finished product. My phone rang. Tom Walsh, probably calling to apologize for last night's dinner disaster. "Hey Evan, listen, about last night?" "Don't worry about it, Tom. Marta was just being Marta." Still, that was pretty rough. Jennifer felt terrible afterward. I could hear the careful concern in his voice, the tone people used when they were trying to gauge how much damage had been done. "Actually, I'm glad it happened. Sometimes you need to hear the truth, even when it's ugly." "Come on, man. You know she didn't mean it like that." But that was the thing. I was pretty sure she had meant it exactly like that. And the conversation I'd overheard with Sophie had confirmed it. "Tom, can I ask you something? Be honest. When you look at me, what do you see?" The pause was longer than it should have been. "I see my friend Evan. Good guy, successful business, solid marriage." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. "Look, we all change as we get older. It's not about looks, it's about being happy." which was, of course, a diplomatic way of saying that yes, I'd become the kind of man people described with words like solid and dependable, instead of anything that might suggest actual attractiveness. "Thanks for being honest," I said. "Evan, you're not thinking of doing anything drastic, are you? Like, I don't know, having a midlife crisis or something?" I looked around my basement office at the photos of beautiful furniture, at the drafting table where I designed solutions to other people's problems, at the mirror that reflected a man who'd apparently become invisible to his own wife. "No crisis, Tom. Just some overdue home improvements." After I hung up, I drove to Dr. Martinez's office for my dental consultation. Professional teeth whitening, he explained, could take years off a person's appearance. Combined with some minor cosmetic work, nothing dramatic, just optimization, the results could be quite striking. "Many of my patients tell me it changes how people respond to me," Dr. Martinez said, showing me before and after photos on his tablet. "Confidence is attractive, and when you feel good about your smile, it shows." I scheduled the first appointment for the following week. On the drive home, I stopped by Henderson's Hardware, where I'd been buying supplies for 15 years. Old Pete Henderson was behind the counter, same as always, but when I walked in, he barely looked up from his newspaper. "Help you find something, buddy?" Buddy? Not "Hey, Evan," or "How's the cabinet business?" Just the generic greeting he'd give any stranger who wandered in off the street. I bought a pack of sandpaper I didn't need and left, but the interaction stuck with me. When had I become so forgettable that people who known me for years started treating me like a stranger? That evening, Marta came home later than usual, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright with excitement. "Great day?" I asked from the kitchen, where I was preparing a salad to go with the grilled chicken I'd made for dinner, part of the new nutrition plan Mike had outlined. "Amazing day. This new client, Jared Royce? He's got such innovative ideas about brand positioning. Really cutting-edge stuff." Jared Royce. I filed the name away for future reference. "Sounds impressive. What kind of business is he in?" "Marketing consultation. He works with companies that want to completely reinvent their image." She paused, looking at the healthy dinner I'd prepared. "What's all this?" "Thought we could eat better. You're always talking about that clean eating blog you follow." Marta picked at her salad without enthusiasm. "I actually grabbed something with the team earlier. We were brainstorming pretty late." "The team?" "Right." After dinner, I went back to my computer and did what any reasonable person would do in the digital age. I looked up Jared Royce. LinkedIn showed a man about my age with perfect teeth, expensive suits, and the kind of aggressive handsomeness that photographed well in professional headshots. His company website featured testimonials from satisfied clients who completely transformed their marketplace under his guidance. Transformation seemed to be a popular concept these days. I was still researching when Marta's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. The preview showed a text from someone named Jay. "Can't wait for round 2 tomorrow. Tonight was incredible." Round 2 of what? Brainstorming? I didn't touch her phone, didn't invade her privacy. I didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place with the satisfying precision of a well-crafted joint in fine woodwork. My wife thought I was too ugly to cheat. My friends saw me as a harmless, reliable background character in their more interesting lives. I'd become the kind of man people forgot they'd met 5 minutes after meeting him. But here's the thing about transformation. It works both ways. You can go from strong to weak, from noticed to invisible, from desired to dismissed, but you can also reverse the process if you're willing to put in the work. I opened a new document on my computer and started making lists. Gym schedule, nutrition plan, dental appointments, wardrobe updates, all the practical steps of becoming someone new. But I also made another list, a more interesting one. Names and relationships and small details that might prove useful later. Because if there's one thing you learn in the custom furniture business, it's that the most beautiful pieces require the most careful planning. And I was planning something very beautiful indeed. 3 weeks into my transformation, people started noticing, not Marta. She was too busy with her innovative client to pay attention to anything happening at home, but others. The barista at the coffee shop I'd been visiting for 2 years suddenly remembered my name. The checkout girl at the grocery store made eye contact and smiled. Small changes, but I was beginning to understand how much of life was about being seen. Mike's training sessions had become the highlight of my days. Not just for the physical changes, though those were undeniable, but for the conversations. Mike had a way of cutting through bullshit that I found refreshing after years of Marta's careful social maneuvering. "Your wife notice anything yet?" he asked as I finished a set of pull-ups that would have been impossible a month ago. "She's been distracted lately. Work stuff." Mike raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He'd been training people long enough to recognize the signs of a marriage You know what's interesting about transformation? He said, loading more weight onto the bar. It's not really about changing who you are. It's about becoming who you were supposed to be before life got in the way. I thought about that as I drove home, taking a detour past Marta's office building. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, which was odd since she'd told me she'd be working late again. But there, in the visitor spaces, was a silver Tesla that matched the one in Jared Royce's LinkedIn photos. Working late. Right. Instead of going home, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the kind of dive bar where locals went to drink beer and complain about their lives. I'd never been there before. It wasn't the kind of place Marta would approve of, but something drew me in. The bartender was a woman about my age with tired eyes and capable hands. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw her do a quick assessment. New face, but not threatening. Decent clothes, wedding ring, probably harmless. What can I get you? Beer. Whatever's good. She pulled a draft and slid it across the bar. Haven't seen you in here before. First time, I'm Evan. Diane, you live around here? About 10 minutes away. Married to Marta Hansen. Well, Marta Marston. She works at that ad agency downtown. Diane's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Oh, Marta. The way she said it told me everything I needed to know. In a town this size, reputations traveled fast. You know her? We went to high school together. She was popular. I sipped my beer and waited. People always filled uncomfortable silences if you gave them enough time. Look, I don't know you, and it's not my business, but... Diane glanced around the mostly empty bar, then leaned closer. You're the one with the fancy car? Jared Royce. That's him, real smooth talker. They sit in that corner booth, all intense conversation and meaningful looks. None of my business, but I thought you should know. I finished my beer slowly, processing this information. Thanks for telling me. Like I said, not my business, but you seem like a decent guy. Driving home, I felt strangely calm. The last piece of the puzzle had clicked into place, and now I could see the whole picture clearly. My wife was having an affair with her innovative client, a man who represented everything I'd apparently failed to become. Polished, successful, exciting. The house was dark when I got home, but Marta's car was in the driveway. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and her laptop. Hey, she said without looking up. How was your day? Productive. Yours? Exhausting. This Royce project is really demanding. She glanced at me then, and I saw her do a double take. Have you lost weight? Some. It looks good. You should keep it up. The casual dismissal in her voice, as if my transformation was a minor hobby rather than a complete reconstruction of myself, crystallized something cold and hard in my chest. Marta, can I ask you something? Still focused on her screen. Are you happy? That got her attention. She looked up, her expression carefully neutral. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy with our marriage? She closed the laptop and gave me her full attention for the first time in weeks. Evan, where is this coming from? You've been acting strange lately. Strange how? I don't know. Different. You're working out, you're asking weird questions, you went out tonight without telling me where. I went to Murphy's Tavern, had a beer, talked to the bartender. Nice woman named Diane, says she knows you from high school. Marta's face went very still. I don't really remember anyone named Diane. She remembers you, says you've been in there recently, with Jared Royce. The silence stretched between us like a wire under tension. Marta's wineglass trembled slightly in her hand. It's not what you think, she said finally. What do I think? We needed somewhere quiet to talk business, away from the office. Business, at Murphy's Tavern. Evan, you're being paranoid. I stood up slowly, aware of how much easier the movement had become since the start of the movement. Maybe I'm finally paying attention. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, giving her time to decide how she wanted to do this. When I came back, she was staring at her hands. I never meant for anything to happen, she said. There it was. The admission I'd been expecting, but somehow hadn't prepared for. Hearing it out loud felt like being punched in the stomach by someone who's harassing. How long? It's not, it's just emotional. We connect intellectually and all of that. How long, Marta? 6 weeks, maybe 7. Right around the time she started calling me ugly in public. The timing was either cruelly ironic or perfectly calculated. Do you love him? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Young, ambitious, beautiful, in a sharp-edged way that made me feel lucky just to be myself. listening in. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. It's really not, he said. You either do or you don't. What about you? She asked, suddenly defensive. When's the last time you told me you loved me? When's the last time you looked at me like I was something special instead of just part of the furniture? She wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, we both stopped trying. But only one of us had decided to find excitement in someone else's pain. So what happens now? I don't know. Any time to take all the time you need. But Marta, no more lies. You're going to keep seeing him, at least have the courage to be honest. She nodded, tears streaming down her eyes. I'm sorry. I really hate you. I believe you. But sorry wasn't going to fix this. And we both did. That night, I lay in our bed listening to Marta cry softly beside me, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was something colder and more useful. Clarity. For 12 years, I'd been playing by rules that only I was following. Being faithful while she explored her options, being grateful while she cataloged my deficiencies, being safe while she sought excitement elsewhere. But games were only fun when everyone understood the rules. And it was time for Marta to learn that I'd been studying a completely different rulebook. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Jessica Chen, a photographer who'd hired me to build custom shelving for her studio 6 months ago. She'd been friendly, professional, and had made a point of complimenting my work when she'd recommended me to 3 of her friends. She'd also mentioned, more than once, that her husband had left her for his secretary and that she was finally ready to start living again. I typed a message. Hi Jessica, hope you're well. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I have some ideas for additional storage solutions for your studio. It wasn't a lie. I did have ideas for her studio, but I also had ideas for a lot of other things, and Jessica Chen, attractive, successful, recently divorced Jessica Chen, was about to become part of a much larger project. Marta's phone buzzed on her nightstand. Even in the dark, I could see her reach for it eagerly, then slump with disappointment when she saw whatever message was waiting. Not from Jared, apparently. My phone lit up with Jessica's response. I'd love to. Tomorrow afternoon work for you? I typed back, perfect, looking forward to it. And I was. Because if Marta thought she was the only one who could play games, she was about to get a very expensive education in just how wrong a person could be. The rules had changed, she just didn't know it yet. Coffee with Jessica turned into lunch, which turned into a 2-hour conversation that reminded me what it felt like to have someone actually listen when I spoke. She was smart, funny, and had the kind of confidence that comes from surviving something difficult and coming out stronger. You seem different than I remembered, she said as we walked to our cars. More present, I guess. I'm working on some improvements. Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look great. The compliment hit differently than the polite acknowledgments I'd been getting from strangers. This was someone who'd known me before, who could see the change and appreciate it. Jessica, can I ask you something? When your marriage ended, how long did it take people to start treating you differently? She considered the question seriously. About 6 months. At first, everyone was walking on eggshells, like divorce might be contagious. Then they started seeing me as Jessica the photographer instead of Jessica the abandoned wife. Why? Just curious about the social dynamics of reinvention. Are you and Marta having problems? I could have deflected, made some joke about the normal challenges of marriage. Instead, I found myself telling her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. She's been seeing someone else. Says it's just emotional, but you know better? Yeah. Jessica reached out and touched my arm, a gesture of sympathy that felt more intimate than it probably was. I'm sorry. That's awful. The weird part is, I'm not sure I'm surprised. We've been strangers living in the same house for a while now. What are you going to do? I'm still figuring that out. That evening, Marta came home with flowers, expensive ones from the florist downtown, not grocery store carnations, gilt flowers. These are beautiful, I said, arranging them in a vase. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to buy flowers for my husband? No, but you've never done it before? She flinched at that. I want to work on us, Evan, if you're willing. I looked at her standing in our kitchen, beautiful and nervous and probably genuine in her desire to fix things. A month ago, I would have grabbed onto that hope like a drowning man reaching for a life preserver. What would that look like? I asked. I don't know. Counseling, maybe? Date nights? I could cut back on work, spend more time at home. What about Jared? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marta's face cycled through several expressions before settling on something that might have been resolve. I'll end it. The professional relationship and the other thing. Can you do that? Just turn off feelings? I can try. I wanted to believe her. Part of me, the part that remembered falling in love with this woman, that had built a life around the idea of us, desperately wanted to believe her. Okay, I said. Let's try. The relief on her face was so profound that I almost felt guilty for what I was planning. Almost. We had dinner together for the first time in weeks, talking about safe topics like home renovations and vacation plans. Marta made an effort to ask about my work, and I made an effort to seem interested in her stories about office politics. It felt like a performance, but at least we were both trying. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie together, something we hadn't done in months. We settled on the couch, and she curled up against me the way she used to when we were dating. This is nice, she murmured. Yeah, I agreed, and meant it. Whatever else was happening between us, this moment felt real. But moments don't last, and by the next morning, the careful truce we'd negotiated was already showing cracks. Marta's phone buzzed during breakfast, and I watched her face light up before she caught herself and set it aside without looking. Probably work, she said. Probably. I kissed her goodbye and watched her drive away, then immediately called Jessica. Want to grab lunch today? I have some new ideas for your studio project. I'd love to, but I can't today. How about dinner instead? Dinner was more intimate than lunch, more like a date, which was exactly what I was hoping for. Sounds perfect. I spent the morning working on the Henderson dining table, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of sanding and shaping. There was something meditative about transforming raw wood into something beautiful and functional. It required patience, skill, and a clear vision of the end result, not unlike transforming yourself. My phone rang around noon. Tom Walsh, probably checking in to see how I was handling my marital crisis. Hey, Tom. Evan, listen. I need to ask you something, and I want you to know it's coming from a place of friendship. Okay. Were you at Rossetti's last night? With a woman who wasn't Marta? Rossetti's was the upscale Italian place where Jessica and I had ended up for dinner. Apparently, we'd been seen. I was. Jessica Chen, the photographer. We were discussing a business project. Look, man, I get it. Things are tough at home, and Jessica's an attractive woman. But if you're thinking about evening the score, what makes you think things are tough at home? Tom was quiet for a moment. Come on, Evan. After that dinner last week, and now you're out with other women. One woman, for a business dinner. Right, business. Look, I'm not judging, but you might want to be more discreet. People talk. What are people saying? That you're having some kind of midlife crisis. New clothes, working out, dating other women while your wife's trying to save your marriage. I almost laughed. The narrative was already being written, and I was cast as the villain. Marta's affair was apparently invisible to our social circle, but my business dinner was evidence of moral failure. Thanks for the heads up, Tom. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm great, actually. Better than I've been in years. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop thinking about perception and reality. In our social circle, I was the one behaving badly. Marta was the victim, trying to hold her marriage together while her husband acted out. It was a fascinating study in how people saw what they expected to see. That evening, I met Jessica at a small bistro across town, far from the usual haunts of our social circle. She looked stunning in a way that seemed effortless, and I found myself wondering when I'd stop noticing how beautiful women could be. You seem distracted, she said over appetizers. Just thinking about social dynamics, how quickly narratives form and spread. Ah, the divorce rumor mill. I'm familiar with that particular machine. What did people say about you? That I must have done something to drive my husband away. That I was too focused on my career, too independent, too intimidating. Funny how it's never the cheating husband's fault. Is that what happened? He cheated? Among other things. Turned out he'd been having affairs for most of our marriage. I was just the last to know. The parallel to my own situation was uncomfortably clear. How did you get through it? Badly, at first. Then I got angry, which was actually more useful than being sad. Anger motivates you to make changes. What kind of changes? Jessica smiled, and there was something predatory in it that I found oddly attractive. The kind that make your ex-husband realize what he lost. The kind that make him call you drunk at 2 a.m, begging for another chance. Did you give him one? God, no. But it was satisfying to say no. We talked for 2 hours, and I found myself sharing more than I'd intended. Not just about Marta's affair, but about the years of feeling invisible, unimportant, taken for granted. You know what's interesting? Jessica said as we waited for the check. 6 months ago, you were just the nice carpenter. So off limits. Now you're the kind of man women notice. It's not just the physical changes, though those are significant. It's the way you carry yourself, like you know something the rest of us don't. Maybe I do. Care to share? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face in the candlelight. I'm learning that most people only respect you as much as you respect yourself, and I spent a lot of years not respecting myself very much. And now? Now I'm discovering what I'm actually worth. Jessica reached across the table and took my hand. I'd like to help you with that discovery, if you're interested. The invitation was clear, and for a moment I was tempted. She was beautiful, interested, and available. Everything my wife apparently wasn't. But I wasn't ready for that step yet. Not because of loyalty to Marta, but because I was still building towards something bigger. I'm flattered. But I'm not quite ready for that. When you are, let me know. While driving home, I thought about the evening and what it represented. 6 months ago, a woman like Jessica wouldn't have looked at me twice. Now she was openly propositioning me, and I was confident enough to turn her down without feeling like I was missing my only chance. The house was dark when I got home, but Marta's car was in the driveway. I found her in bed, apparently asleep, but her phone was on the nightstand and the screen was still glowing. I didn't look at her messages. I didn't need to. The guilty tension in her supposedly sleeping form told me everything I needed to know about how well she was keeping her promise to end things with Jared. I got ready for bed quietly, thinking about Jessica's words. Most people only respect you as much as you respect yourself. For 12 years, I'd accepted Marta's assessment of my worth. I'd been grateful for her attention, even as that attention diminished. I'd made myself smaller to make her feel bigger, but I was done being small. And tomorrow, Marta was going to start learning what that meant. I was almost asleep when her phone buzzed again. She reached for it immediately, confirming that she hadn't been sleeping at all. In the glow of her screen, I saw her smile the way she used to smile at me, back when I was new and exciting instead of familiar and safe. That smile was going to cost her everything. Friday night dinner with the Walshes had been a tradition for 3 years, but this time felt different. Tom and Jennifer were trying too hard to act normal, and Marta was performing the role of devoted wife with an intensity that bordered on parody. Evan looks amazing, Jennifer said as we settled into our usual booth at Romano's. You must be so proud of his transformation. Marta smiled tightly. Oh, I am. Though I do worry he's becoming obsessed with the gym. Obsessed is a strong word, I said mildly. I prefer committed. It's inspiring, really, Tom added. Makes me think I should get back in shape myself. You should, I agreed. It's amazing what you discover about yourself when you start pushing boundaries. The conversation continued in that vein. Safe topics peppered with subtle tension. But I was watching Marta, noting how often she checked her phone, how distracted she seemed despite her performance of marital bliss. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen, and her face lit up before she caught herself. Excuse me, this is work. I should take it. She stepped away from the table, and I watched through the restaurant window as she paced in the parking lot, animated and smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. Everything okay at home? Jennifer asked quietly. Define okay, I said. Tom and Jennifer exchanged glances. Evan, we're worried about you. You seem different lately. Different how? Harder, Jennifer said. Less patient, and the rumors about you and that photographer. Jessica Chen, we're friends. Just friends? Tom asked. I considered the question. For now. What does that mean? It means I'm keeping my options open. The silence that followed was heavy with disapproval. Tom leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Look, man, I get it. Marta's been difficult lately, and you're going through some kind of midlife crisis. But throwing away 12 years of marriage for some rebound relationship? Who says I'm throwing anything away? Then what are you doing? Marta returned to the table before I could answer, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. Sorry about that. Crisis averted. What kind of crisis? I asked. Oh, client emergency. Jared needed some quick feedback on a presentation. Jared. At 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Right. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation, and I could feel the Walsh's disapproval like a physical weight. In their version of events, I was the problem. Marta was trying to save our marriage while I acted out with other women and transformed myself into someone they didn't recognize. It was a compelling narrative. It was also complete bullshit. After dinner, Marta and I drove home in silence. She was texting someone, her fingers flying over the screen with the kind of urgency reserved for new love or guilty secrets. "Good crisis management?" I asked. "What?" "With Jared. You seem to handle it well." "Oh, yes, it was just a presentation issue." "Must be important to call so late on a Friday." Marta's fingers stilled on her phone. "He's very dedicated to his clients." "I'm sure he is." We pulled into our driveway, and I noticed that Marta made no move to get out of the car. She was staring at her phone again, at whatever message had just arrived. "Marta, Are we really going to keep pretending?" She looked up, and in the dim light from the dashboard, I could see the guilt and defiance warring in her expression. "Pretending what?" "That you ended things with him, that this is working, that we're happy." "I am trying, Evan. I really am." "No, you're not. You're managing me while you figure out what you really want." "That's not fair, isn't it? You promised to end things with Jared, but you're still texting him at dinner. You say you want to work on our marriage, but you light up when he calls in a way you never do when I walk in a room." Marta's phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it reflexively before catching herself. "See," I said. "Even now, he's more interesting than this conversation." "Evan, please. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to do the right thing." "What's the right thing, Marta? What do you actually want?" The question hung between us like a challenge. For a moment, I thought she might actually answer honestly. Instead, she deflected. "What do you want? Because lately it feels like you want to punish me." "Maybe I do." The admission surprised us both. Marta's eyes widened, and I realized I'd crossed some line I hadn't known existed. "Punish me how?" "I haven't decided yet." We stared at each other in the dark car, 12 years of marriage reduced to this moment of perfect clarity. She was afraid of me, maybe for the first time in our relationship, and I was discovering that I liked it. "I'm going inside," she said finally. "Good idea." I sat in the car for a few minutes after she left, thinking about the evening and what it had revealed. Tom and Jennifer saw me as the villain in this story, but they only had half the information. Our entire social circle was probably talking about my midlife crisis and poor Marta's attempts to save her marriage. Let them talk. Soon enough, they'd have the whole story. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "How was dinner with the friends? Still want to grab a drink later?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Rain check, but I might need that drink sooner than expected. Everything okay?" "Getting there." Inside, I found Marta in the living room with her laptop, supposedly working, but obviously distracted. Her phone was face down on the coffee table, but it kept lighting up with notifications. "Popular night?" I observed. "Just work stuff." I sat down across from her, and she looked up nervously. "Marta, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer." "Okay." "If you could have any life you wanted, with no consequences, what would it look like?" She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. If you could wave a magic wand and have the perfect life, what would it be?" This is a weird conversation, Evan. Humor me." She was quiet for a long time, and I could see her weighing her words carefully. "I'd want to feel excited again," she said finally. "Like anything was possible, like I was interesting and desirable and alive." "And do you feel that way now?" Another long pause. "Sometimes." "With him?" "Evan, it's okay. I'm not going to yell or throw things. I just want to understand." "Yes," she whispered. "With him, I feel like the person I used to be, before I got comfortable and settled. Married to me. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And you know what? That's fine. You want excitement and possibility and to feel alive. I get it." Marta looked confused, like she'd been braced for a fight and didn't know how to handle understanding. "You do?" "Absolutely. You deserve to feel those things. Everyone does." "So what are you saying?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our perfectly maintained suburban street. "I'm saying maybe it's time we both stopped pretending to be people we're not." "What does that mean?" I turned back to her, and I could see her trying to read my expression. "It means I'm done being the safe choice, Marta. I'm done being the reliable husband who's grateful for whatever attention you decide to spare me. I'm done being ugly." "You're not ugly, Evan. I never should have said that." "But you did say it, and you meant it. And more importantly, you believed it gave you permission to treat me like I was disposable." "That's not... I don't think you're disposable." "Don't you?" When's the last time you worried about losing me? When's the last time you thought another woman might find me attractive? Marta's face went very still. Are you seeing someone else? Would it matter if I was? Of course it would matter. Why? Because I'm supposed to be faithful while you explore your options. Because I'm too ugly to have choices. Evan, that's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make her flinch. You want to talk about fair? I walked over and picked up her phone. She reached for it instinctively, but I held it just out of reach. How many messages from Jared tonight? 5? 10? Give me my phone. In a minute. First, let's talk about fair. Is it fair that you promised to end things with him, but you're still texting him during dinner with our friends? Is it fair that you're making me look like a fool while you decide which life you want? I'm not making you look like anything. No? Tom and Jennifer think I'm having a midlife crisis. They think I'm the one destroying our marriage. They feel sorry for you. Marta's face crumpled. I never told them anything. I would never... You didn't have to tell them. Your behavior told them everything they needed to know. I handed her the phone, and she clutched it like a lifeline. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to make a choice, him or me, but you're going to make it honestly, and you're going to live with the consequences. What kind of consequences? I smiled, and I could see her trying to decide if she should be afraid. The kind that come from underestimating people, Marta. You thought I was too ugly, too safe, too grateful to ever be a threat. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too? And now? Now you get to find out what happens when the underdog bites back. I left her sitting in the living room, staring at her phone and trying to process what had just happened. Upstairs, I packed a bag with enough clothes for a few days. When I came back down, she was still in the same position. Where are you going? Hotel. You need space to think, and I need space to plan. Plan what? Your education. I kissed her forehead gently, the same way I had every morning for 12 years. Choose carefully, Marta, because whatever you decide, you're going to have to live with it, and so is everyone else. I left her sitting in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together, finally understanding that the game had changed and she was no longer the only one who knew how to play. The reckoning had begun. The Riverside Hotel wasn't fancy, but it was clean and anonymous, the kind of place where people went when they needed to disappear for a while. I'd been there for 3 days, using the time to plan and prepare for what came next. Jessica had been surprisingly understanding when I'd called to explain the situation. Take the time you need, she'd said, but when you're ready to talk, I'm here. It was nice to have someone in my corner, even if she didn't fully understand what she was signing up for. On Wednesday morning, I got the call I'd been expecting. Tom Walsh, probably acting as Marta's ambassador. Evan, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Murphy's at lunch? Murphy's Tavern, where Diane the bartender had first told me about Marta and Jared's cozy meetings. The irony was perfect. Tom was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking uncomfortable. He'd clearly been elected to handle the intervention. You look good, he said as I sat down. Rested. I feel good. Clear-headed. Diane appeared at our table, and I saw her recognize me. The usual? She asked. You have a usual already. Tom looked surprised. Evan's been in a few times? Diane said smoothly. Nice to see you again. After she left, Tom leaned forward with the earnest expression he wore when he was trying to fix things. Look, man, I don't know what happened between you and Marta, but she's a mess. She's been calling Jennifer crying, saying you've changed, that you're scaring her. Scaring her how? She says you're different, cold, like you're planning something. Maybe I am. Evan, come on. Whatever she did, whatever mistakes were made, you guys can work through this. 12 years of marriage is worth fighting for. I sipped my beer and studied my oldest friend. Tom was a good guy, the kind of person who believed problems could be solved with honest communication and mutual respect. He'd never been married to someone who thought he was too ugly to cheat. Tom, let me ask you something. If Jennifer was having an affair, what would you do? Marta's not having an affair. Isn't she? The question hung between us. Tom's face went through several expressions before settling on uncomfortable resignation. Look, maybe she's been confused lately. Maybe she's made some poor choices. But that doesn't mean you have to blow up your whole life. What if I'm not blowing it up? What if I'm finally building something worth having? By dating other women? By abandoning your wife when she needs you most? When she needs me most? I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make Tom flinch. Tom, she called me ugly in front of our friends. She's been having an affair for 2 months. She lied to my face about ending it. At what point do I get to stop being understanding? She made mistakes. People make mistakes. Some mistakes have consequences. Tom was quiet for a moment, then tried a different approach. What about Jessica? Are you serious about her? Jessica is a friend who's been honest with me from the beginning, unlike some people. So you are seeing her. I'm considering my options. Jesus, Evan, listen to yourself. This isn't you. How do you know who I am, Tom? How does anyone know? For 12 years, I've been playing the role of the grateful husband, the reliable friend, the guy who's just happy to be included, but maybe that was never really me. So who are you? I finished my beer and stood up. I'm still figuring that out. But I know what I'm not. I'm not the guy who gets called ugly at dinner parties and smiles about it. I'm not the guy who pretends not to notice when his wife is texting her lover during date night. And I'm definitely not the guy who forgives and forgets just to keep everyone comfortable. What do you want from her, Evan? What would it take to fix this? It's too late for fixing, Tom. Now it's about consequences. I left him sitting at the table, probably composing the speech he'd give Marta about how unreasonable I'd become. That evening, I drove past our house and saw 3 cars in the driveway. Marta's, Jennifer's, and a silver Tesla that could only belong to Jared Royce. Apparently, the support committee was meeting at my house. Perfect. I parked across the street and called Jessica. Feel like getting that drink now? I asked. Absolutely. Where? Romano's, where my wife and I used to have dinner with friends. Isn't that a little provocative? That's exactly what it is. Jessica met me at the restaurant 20 minutes later, looking stunning in a way that seemed effortless, but probably wasn't. The hostess seated us at a table with a clear view of the parking lot, and I settled in to wait. Are you going to tell me what this is about? Jessica asked over appetizers. Social dynamics, perception management. The difference between being the victim and being the victor. That's cryptic. Marta thinks I'm having a breakdown. My friends think I'm going through a midlife crisis. Everyone feels sorry for her because her husband is acting erratically while she tries to save their marriage. But that's not the whole story. Not even close. She's been having an affair for 2 months. Tonight, her lover is at my house, probably comforting her about how unreasonable I've become. Jessica's eyes widened. And you want them to see us together. I want everyone to see us together. I want the whole story to come out, not just the version that makes me look like the villain. Evan, are you sure about this? Once you cross this line... I crossed the line 3 days ago when I stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. We were halfway through dinner when I saw the silver Tesla pull into the parking lot. Jared Royce got out, looking every inch the successful executive in his expensive suit and perfect hair. He was followed by Marta, who was dressed like she was going to a business meeting rather than a casual dinner. They were seated 3 tables away, close enough that I could see Marta's face when she spotted me. The color drained from her cheeks, and she said something urgent to Jared, who turned to look in our direction. Showtime, I murmured to Jessica. Are you okay? She asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I'm perfect. And I was. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely in control of my own life. Jared stood up and walked over to our table, his expression carefully neutral. Up close, he was exactly what I'd expected. Polished, confident, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. Evan Marston, I'm Jared Royce. I think we should talk. Should we? About what? About the situation with Marta? I think there's been some misunderstanding. I looked past him to where Marta was sitting, her hands pressed to her mouth like she was trying to hold back words, or tears, or both. No misunderstanding, I said. You're sleeping with my wife. She thinks I'm too ugly to do anything about it. Pretty straightforward situation. Jared's composure slipped slightly. Look, I know this is awkward, but Marta and I have developed feelings for each other. These things happen. They do indeed, just like consequences happen. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up slowly, aware that the entire restaurant was now watching our conversation. It means you picked the wrong man's wife to sleep with, Jared. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, you thought you were dealing with some pathetic cuckold who'd roll over and accept whatever scraps his wife decided to throw him, but you miscalculated. How's that? I smiled, and I could see him trying to decide whether he should be worried. You're about to find out. I walked over to Marta's table, aware that every eye in the restaurant was following me. She looked up with a mixture of fear and defiance that I found oddly attractive. Enjoying your date? I asked. Evan, please, not here. Why not here? You've been meeting him in public for months. Murphy's Tavern, remember? Diane says hi, by the way. Marta's face went white. You don't understand. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I've been documenting things, Marta. Photos, dates, times. Your car at his condo, his car at Murphy's when you told me you were working late. Text messages I accidentally saw when you left your phone on the counter. You've been spying on me? I've been paying attention, something I should have done a long time ago. Jared returned to the table, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. This is harassment. I could call the police. Please do. I'm sure they'd be very interested in your relationship with a married woman, especially since you are supposed to be providing professional services to her company. The threat hit home. Jared's jaw tightened, but he didn't reach for his phone. What do you want? Marta asked quietly. I want you to choose. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Him or me. That's not fair. You can't make me choose like this. I'm not making you do anything. I'm just done pretending this isn't happening. The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Even the kitchen staff had stopped moving to listen to our conversation. Marta, Jared said urgently, we don't have to do this. We can leave. No, I said firmly. She can leave with you, or she can come home with me, but she's going to decide right now, in front of all these people, what her marriage is worth. Marta looked around the restaurant, at all the faces watching her, waiting for her decision. She looked at Jared, handsome and successful, and offering her the excitement she craved. She looked at Jessica, sitting at our table like a beautiful reminder of what I could have if I chose. Finally, she looked at me. I choose him, she said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I'd been expecting them. What surprised me was the relief I felt, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had suddenly been lifted. Good, I said. That makes everything much simpler. I walked back to Jessica, who was watching the whole scene with wide eyes. Ready to go? I asked. Are you okay? I'm free. As we left the restaurant, I could hear the buzz of conversation starting up behind us. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know that Marta Marston had chosen her lover over her husband in a very public confrontation. What happens now? Jessica asked as we got to our cars. Now the real fun begins. I drove home to find the house empty. Marta had apparently gone with Jared, leaving me alone with 12 years of shared possessions and memories. I walked through the rooms, seeing everything with new eyes. The expensive furniture Marta insisted on, the artwork she'd chosen, the color schemes that reflected her taste, not mine. It was a beautiful house, but it had never really been mine. I went to my basement workshop and sat at my drafting table, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented who I really was. This was my space, the only part of the house that felt authentic. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. She never loved you anyway. Jay. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, Thanks for taking her off my hands. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Then I blocked the number and opened my laptop. It was time to start the next phase of my education program. By morning, I'd filed for divorce, changed the locks, and transferred half our joint assets to my personal account. I'd also sent a detailed email to Marta's boss, explaining the nature of her relationship with their client, and including documentation of their meetings during business hours. Marta called at 7 a.m., screaming about betrayal and vindictiveness. I listened to her rage for about 30 seconds, then hung up and blocked her number too. Jessica called an hour later. I saw the news about your divorce file. How are you holding up? I'm great. Want to get breakfast? Are you sure you're ready for it? People are going to talk. Let them talk. I'm done caring. We met at the diner downtown, the same place where Marta and I had our first date 13 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it felt more like closure than revenge. So what's next? Jessica asked over coffee and eggs. I'm thinking about expanding my business, maybe opening a showroom. I've got some ideas about custom furniture that I've never had the freedom to explore. That sounds exciting. It is. For the first time in years, I feel like anything is possible. Jessica smiled, and I realized that this was what Marta had been looking for with Jared. That sense of possibility, of life opening up instead of closing down. The difference was, I'd found it without betraying anyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Walsh. Heard about the divorce. Sorry, man. If you need anything. I typed back. Thanks, but I'm good. Better than good, actually. And I was. The man who'd sat through that humiliating dinner 3 weeks ago, who'd accepted being called ugly and undesirable, who'd been grateful for whatever scraps of attention his wife decided to spare him, that man was gone. In his place was someone stronger, more confident, more aware of his own worth. Someone who understood that respect was earned, not given. Someone who knew the difference between being safe and being invisible. I looked across the table at Jessica, who was watching me with interest and affection, and I realized that this was just the beginning. Marta had called me ugly because she needed me to be ugly. She needed me to be grateful and harmless and too insecure to threaten her sense of control. But I wasn't ugly. I wasn't harmless. And I definitely wasn't grateful anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I was a man who knew his own value. The divorce would be finalized in 6 months. Marta would discover that adultery had consequences in our state, that her affair with a business client had cost her both her job and her settlement. Jared would learn that excitement was expensive when it came with a vindictive ex-wife and a damaged reputation. And I would build the life I should have had all along, with someone who saw me clearly and liked what she saw. As we left the diner, Jessica took my hand. "You know, you never did finish those storage solutions for my studio." "No, I didn't. We should definitely work on that." "Among other things." I squeezed her hand and smiled. "Among other things." Behind us, I could see our reflection in the diner window. 2 attractive, confident people walking into whatever came next. It was a good look for both of us. Marta had been right about one thing. Looks did fade, but self-respect, confidence, and the willingness to demand what you deserved, those things only got stronger with age. She'd called me ugly because she thought it would keep me in my place. Instead, it had set me free. And that, as it turned out, was the last laugh after all.